Okay. Okay, I have seen a lot of reviews online about Android and iOS, but never really someone's real experience, I feel, with switching from one operating system to another. Now, I'm gonna talk about my experience moving from iOS to Android. And unlike all of the other videos that I've watched before, I'm not gonna be tiptoeing around the brand or the disadvantages or the advantages that I feel the other one gets, like they're paying me to do it, because I feel like the other ones are all acting as if they're getting paid by one brand or another, and they're sort of partial. So I'm gonna give my real honest review, and so this video will not be edited, first of all. So if you feel like something is taking too long, you need to just skip over to the next, because yeah, it's gonna be very candid, sort of. So the phone that I chose to move from iOS is Redmi Note 8. Now the Redmi Note 8 is viewed as a budget smartphone, comes with a pouch already, and this is what the phone looks like. It's got a good screen to body ratio. And I like that. It's got let me talk about the things that I like about the phone that made me move to the phone, for example. Now, I come from an iOS that was okay, an iPhone that was alright. It was an iPhone 7, and this Redmi Note 8 here has 4 gigs of RAM. It has face unlock, fingerprint sensor at the back over here if you don't want to use the face unlock, and they work simultaneously, so you don't have to only use one or the other. That's a plus for me. And one of the features that I like is it still has some of the features that I think this phone gives. For a so-called mid-range phone, it really gives you more than what they are pricing it for, because I bought this phone for $3,200 delivered to my doorstep, and this is in South African rands, so that's really a bang for my buck. It's got the headphone jack still, right? You can see it over here, alright? It's got a headphone jack over here. It's got a single speaker at the bottom, and it's got USB Type-C. The USB Type-C also supports fast charging, so up to 18 watts, and that is pretty fast for the first 30 minutes, or for the first 20% at least. It's very fast. Also, it has an air blaster, so you can use it as a remote control for your TV, stuff like that. And there are just so many little things that the phone has that I feel I was not getting with iPhone. Now, bear in mind that when I had an iPhone, I always wanted a jailbroken iPhone. I could not be with a non-jailbroken iPhone because it does way too little for me. Even though I liked the comfort of having things like Apple Music and iCloud and all of that, there are alternatives on Android. The disclaimer that I would tell you though is that you have to be willing to lose things if you're gonna switch, because there are some things that I definitely had to lose in order for me to move and switch from this side, because they make it as unfriendly as possible. And I am a hustler when it comes to tech, but at the same time I don't want to pay for things that I shouldn't be paying for, or they feel I should be paying for but I shouldn't be paying for, I feel. So here's another feature that this Redmi has, is double tap to open. It has face unlock, so it obviously unlocked it because it saw my face. And as you can see here, my icons are still similar to iOS. This is because I installed the iOS 13 icon theme. So on the theme version, if you go to settings, actually if you go to the themes, and you check on my page here, let me see where you get the summary of everything. Okay, so here you can see that I've kept everything on default. So everything else is on default for me, except for my icons. I've got the iOS 13 Duo Pro installed because I like the familiarity coming from iOS. This is important for me because even though the names of the icons are different, the icons are still the same. So I will recognize still that if I need to go to get my apps, even though this says Play Store instead of App Store, I still know that that's what the icon looks for, where I need to get my apps. For photos, even though this is named Gallery, I forgot now what it's named on iOS, maybe Photos, but the icon is what I recognize. Calculator, the clock, the calendar, they still look very similar, so that helps me. And this Redmi Note 8 also has dual SIM capability, so I can have 2 SIM cards in one phone. I can expand the memory from 64 gigs to up to, I think, 256 if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure about that. All I know is that I can expand the memory with a good micro SD card if I want to, and I can have 2 SIM cards. On top of that, I can have 2 different users. In the if I go to settings and go to special features, there is one here called second space, and in the second space I can have a completely different user. So I can, in that second one, I can have a completely different Play Store, a completely different user, and completely different apps. Now on my apps as well, I'm using 2 WhatsApp numbers right now, but what people don't know is that even though I can use 2 different apps, I can make the apps dual capabilities on one space. I can actually do that on both spaces. So essentially I can have 4 different WhatsApp numbers working simultaneously on one phone, and well, that's definitely something you're never gonna get on iOS even 20 years from now. I don't think they'll make that a possibility. So when you go to the settings, you can see that I've enabled dark mode here with mine. I quite like it, and I've actually made most of the things that I can make dark mode because I like it. The gesture of the phone is still similar to the gestures on iOS, and of course there are some things that are not the same, like when you pull down the control center, the notification center why am I still calling it control center? Things like that, it's gonna be different. But trust me, just as you could get get used to the iOS ecosystem, you can get used to this. The fingerprint sensor works just fine, and to get used to the settings, it takes a while, but eventually you would. Now I must say that one thing that I hate about Android, that I did not like, is this cleaner section where you have to basically understand what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of, and you have to clean your data. On iOS, I used to just use my phone as I would, and I wouldn't have to worry about any cache data or anything like that. I don't have to worry about cleaning those things. And on Android, unfortunately, you have to worry about the data that you have, like what pictures you keep in your library, or the stuff that your individual apps will download. Do you want to keep them or not? You know, you frequently have to check in this cleaner app if you want to keep your phone using minimal memory, that is to make sure that your phone doesn't get bloated with all of these unnecessary data, like you're opening videos and you're watching a video on Facebook, and for some reason it just kind of stores it somewhere inside of the internal memory, and it makes your internal memory smaller. Now obviously this is a phone that has a capability of taking 4K videos, and that's also sort of like a downer, because I must say that on this phone the pictures and video capability is absolute trash. I don't like it, but I didn't buy it for photos, so you know, I think that's one thing to consider, that when you buy an Android phone, you really need to have real-time usage for you to determine whether the picture capability, photo taking capabilities to your needs, because it's very different. Now this one comes with things like you can add widgets. Like you can see here, I've added widgets of the lock widget, so I can just tap on the screen if I want to lock the screen without having to press here every single time, and double tap to wake. Then there are widgets for Wi-Fi, there's widgets for different things that you can add. All of these widgets you can add on the Android. Now this Android version that I'm using is MIUI, so this is a different type of UI than the other ones. Like I think Huawei is similar to this. They're not all the same, but at the end of the day they're all Android based, and they're all running off of Android. So this is MIUI 11, so it has perks for me, like using the calculator. You can have it floating around, and you can have it opened within other apps. You know, I can resize it, I can move it to places. There are some functionality that I really need, that I find is useful, like having the Tasks app always here, even though you can also go to Notes and find them here in the task, but in Notes is a different section. But when you go, like when you always have this reminding you that that's where your reminders are, it'll help you actually just take a glance if you seem to forget anything, right? So now let's talk about the things that I lost moving from iOS to Android. First of all, I've been collecting people's cell phone numbers for over a decade, since I started using my first iOS, and I lost most of those numbers because I couldn't back them up on my iOS device. Now I could have backed them up on my iOS using Google Drive, but in order for me to back up my data on my iOS device, which was 128 gigabytes device, they wanted me to sign up to pay for the premium so that I get more than the 5 gigabytes in order to just back up my numbers and all of that. Even though my numbers and the things I wanted to back up were less than the 5 gig they would allow for free, they still wanted me to have the whole storage of the phone, which makes absolutely no sense to me, that they wanted me to have more than the 100 gigs. I mean, if my data on the phone was 68 gigs, they wanted me to have 68 gigs of cloud storage in order to back up only 5 gigabytes. That was really stupid of iCloud. So I was like, whatever, you know, I don't mind losing it, and I lost whatever I lost there. I backed up all my photos on Google Drive on my iOS device, so I can still access them here on my Android device. So that's okay. It was about 6,000 photos and about 200 videos. It took a couple of days, I think, to back up because of the videos, but eventually it did. Every time I'd connect to Wi-Fi, I would always just make sure that it's backing those up. So now that I've moved completely, there are some things I lost, but what I've gained is still okay. And if you're using an iPhone 10 right now, you won't get as much user ability as you would on this Android phone that is mid-range. An iPhone 10 still has premium pricing right now, but it will not give you the same amount of user ability as this could give me. And you'd have to be jailbroken just to do some things, really. This has split screen capability. I like the app drawer, so I have the app drawer installed on mine, even though I have these icons. So I have my icons here, and I have just one widget that I have, that is a calendar. And then I have the iOS 13 icons because I come from iOS, so this is familiar to me. And there are just many little perks of using an Android phone that will make you surprised. So if you're a normal person that is just looking to use a phone for normal usage of, browsing apps, social media apps, and doing email, like here you can see that I've got Blue Mail installed, but I've got dual app capability for those, so I have different accounts that I have installed, like my personal accounts and my work accounts on this side. Just these little things. And the cool thing about Android that I like is that some of the apps are able to run under the UI, so it's not like with mine. I did not root this phone, I didn't do anything special. I just go to the Play Store and I install whatever apps I need to install. And as you can see, it's pretty fast considering it's a budget phone. They say it's a budget phone. It's supposed to be one of their budget phones, but it's pretty fast. It's not lagging at all, and I can have dual capability. I have split screen where I can use two different apps at the same time. Let's say for example we wanna do split screen. So I open this split screen and I can take this and put this over here, and then the other app would be, say, this one. These work simultaneously together at the same time, and yet it's not running slow at all, as you can see. That is a perk. iOS, they have, but everything has to be a lot of work for iOS to work. And if you go inside of the clock, it's still understandable, easy. Look at all my alarms here. This is the world clock, and this is the time, the stopwatch, and we have the timer. You can change the timer to on this one you can have the timer to play any music inside of your internal memory when it goes off. Just the mere fact of using a calculator on top of other apps, that I think is one of the cool things as well. And also, if you don't want to do that, you can have split screen enabled. There are so many things that I will maybe I should go in depth one by one, the capabilities and the advantages of having such a phone. A lot of people, I think, are scared to move from iOS to Android because they've come accustomed to that comfort of knowing that, oh, this is what I know, this is what the people I know are using. And honestly, I can tell you that I have changed many BlackBerry and Android users to using iOS for the decade that I've been using it, and I took the leap and I moved completely. One cool thing also in your file manager with your downloaded data is in MIUI it's categorized to, you can only look at images or just videos or documents, and on top of that it also has you can just if you tap on this button, it'll let you just browse your data inside of your internal memory. But the cool thing about all of it is the fact that you can just switch and categorize them with one tap. Very thoughtful things that it is. Of course, using an Android, you have to learn how to use it. It's definitely not like an iOS device where you just out of the box start opening it and then you use it and it sort of does what you think it should. The operating system still needs a lot of work when it comes to that, but once you know how to use it, you can definitely use it to your advantage. One perk of moving from iOS to Android is still the ability to have Apple Music for me, because I was on Apple Music, and so all my music was installed there, and I still need all of those. I like using Apple Music. I tried Tidal, I tried Spotify, and it's not for me. Sorry, I didn't like either of them. So Apple Music is still working, and I can have these icons looking like iOS 13, so I can still recognize them. The apps still work the same, similar, if not, well, it's not the same, but it's similar. It's not gonna be like you need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will maybe do an in-depth review of each one of them one by one if I need to, but for now I just wanted to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of moving from iOS to Android, or the advantages. And so far I'm gonna say that I'm quite happy for the price that I paid for this phone. If a premium iPhone comes out at about 24,000 Rand and this cost me 3,000 Rand, it's really a no-brainer for me that I could get everything that I can get from the iPhone 10 and more, but I pay a lot less. This has a 4 gig RAM, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max also has a 4 gig RAM, so you can just sort of do the math with that. I guess as the operating systems get upgraded, the apps get upgraded, this will slow down, but by then, even if I want another phone that is stronger than this, it's still not gonna cost me as much as it will cost me an iPhone. So yes, you might upgrade your phone more often, but the price that you pay to upgrade your phone, if you really think about it, is also not going to be as much as buying an iPhone, because you can buy an iPhone now and try to use it for like the longest time. Every year they come out with a newer model, and every single year that Apple comes up with a new model, it seems like it's not worth the upgrade most of the time. As an iOS user, I always found that I would have had to wait about 3 different upgrades for the iPhone to be worth moving into. If I was using an iPhone 7, I'd wanna wait until the iPhone 10 come out for me to feel like, okay, this is an upgrade. And if I was using an iPhone 10, I wouldn't necessarily want all of those things like the iPhone 10R, or even the iPhone 11 is not really worth all that much. I feel like waiting for the iPhone 12 to come out for you to be like, okay, this is a worth it upgrade. So one perk of moving to an Android also is having the ability to choose from so many variety of devices. That can be a cool thing, and it can also be a bad thing depending on the type of person you are. If you like variety, that's a good thing. And if you don't like variety, if you don't like to think too much, that can be a bad thing. So whatever you want to know about the switch between from iOS to Android, let me know, and maybe I'll do an in-depth video about it and tell you my honest opinion about my struggles with it and what I really liked about it. Alright, so catch you next time.